If you live in Essex, you must have heard about the famous native oysters, which are fished on Mersey Island. But did you know that they were discovered back in Roman times? These oysters are one of the significant parts of the local culture, and today we will find out why the oysters took over the Romans' hearts.
Before the Romans came, oysters were fished here in the Colne River and out to sea. So they were famous and eaten a lot here in pre-Roman times. Now the Romans were very particular. They really liked eating oysters. They came here and discovered that it was already a delicacy, and so it was amazing for them. So much so that not only did they eat them here, but they also shipped them over to Rome in barrels of salt water. When olive oil was traded into Britannia, the olive oil was taken out of the big amphora into smaller vessels and traded. And rather than sending empty vessels back home, they would fill them with oysters and the salt water. They were loved. One was the taste, also because they were plentiful, and also because of the reputation that they had for being the food of love. So we have the Roman myth of Aphrodite in Greek, which the Romans adopted as Venus. So the goddess of love and beauty. And she was born out of the sea. She rose from the sea in a big oyster shell. And so from then, the oyster has been seen as an aphrodisiac. Now that name comes from Aphrodite, her Greek name. So yes, if you eat oysters, then you'll get in the mood for love.
Right now I'm standing in front of the Balkan Gate, which in Roman times was the gate towards the main road leading to London, and right there Colchester Archaeological Trust excavated tons of oyster shells. Apparently it used to be the site of the roadside stalls selling oysters to passers-by.
The oysters are like the meat for the Romans, and so they would have roadside stalls selling them. They would be a little bit today like McDonald's, I think, and the shells would be like the packages that are just thrown away at the roadside. They're easy snacks to eat. They don't need to be cooked. You eat them raw. You can cook them, but they're an easy, fast food for the Romans. So oysters were very plentiful. You know, you just go out to the water and scoop them up. So much so that they became rare. They were thought to have been overfished or over-harvested. So the Romans, when they were here, had them farmed. So they actually controlled the production of oysters. They were cheap. It was like today, I think of blackberries. You can pick blackberries from the bushes in the fields along the road, or you could go to the supermarket and spend lots of money on them. And the same with oysters. During Roman times, they were plentiful and they were very, very cheap. Meat was very expensive. You had to raise cattle, raise sheep. It would take a long time. Oysters were eaten when they were about 3 years old, but there were so many of them that it was like meat. It was plentiful, very nutritious. Colchester oysters, and I have some to show you, some real Roman oyster shells. So they're small and round, you can see. So these are from Colchester. They were dug up and they are over 2,000-year-old oysters. When the Romans left Britain, the administration of the Romans left in about the year 410, and then the fisheries, particularly Colchester and Mersey Island, where the Romans had a fish farm or a oyster farm, they went into decline and stopped. And of course, when things are rare, they then become expensive. Medieval times, oysters were eaten, very much so, and again, overfishing, over-collecting, then caused the rarity of them. So you have these, what we call peaks and troughs of supply and demand of pricing. So Oysters from this area of Essex are highly regarded because of their flavour, because of their size, and because of that, they're more expensive because people think they're the best.
Today, we slightly open the door into the local oysters past. But what role do oysters have in the modern Britain, we will find out in the next episode.